order. First issue of business, roll call.
Mr. Coakley, Ms. Wilker, Chair Bush,
Here.
Mr. Kerrigan,
Here.
and Mr. Driver.
Here.
Okay, we didn't look at the minutes of the April 3rd meeting, so has everybody had an opportunity to look at the meetings from April 3rd and May 1st? Does anybody have an issue with either one of those? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the meetings from April 3rd?
I make a motion to approve the meeting from April 3rd.
Can I get a second?
I'm sorry, I had one thing. Didn't quite understand what we were saying. So it's the last minutes.
Is this April 3rd or is this May 1st?
This is April 3rd, back of the page, seven down. Discussion of the board ensued. Mr. Driver appreciated that the petitioner, if allowed, would put a 15-foot setback on the rear property of the deed. Appreciated? Is that? I mean, I know what we're trying to say, but that didn't sound right to me.
The back page?
Yeah. The turnover page.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
6 down.
Oh, okay. You just said thank you for trying to do that. It's not a good idea, I guess.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a problem with that? Nope.
That reads all right to everybody else, but I'm good.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the minutes of the May the 1st meeting. Anybody with an issue on those minutes? Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I move we approve the May 1st minutes.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. And first issue is a variance request from Mr. Cole. Who wants a variance. He plans to build a new home with a 10-foot deck and as an addition to it at 301 Robin Lane. And that 10-foot deck would encroach on the setback from a city right-of-way, which is to the south of the property. Right now, if that variance were granted, there would be 0 feet of setback, would actually bound that city right-of-way property. Mr. Cole also owns the property to the north of that property. The city have anything to add to that?
You're pretty accurate so far. If you look at the map, you know, that's part of what was in the packet. You can see where the west side, or northwest side, or what you want to call it, there's a canal back there, which does hamper the potential use of his property. On the east side, where the deck is going to be, there is this city-owned right-of-way for stormwater, sewer, and whatnot. If you look at it from a standpoint of an overhead, you can see right now that that lot is in the midst of almost a woods. You can't even see the canal over here. You can't see the canal coming down this way either. But on the west side, there is nothing that would impact him. On the east side, there is nothing that would impact him. So my recommendation from the packet was that we didn't have a problem with the request.
Is Mr. Cole here? He's not here. Anyone in the audience have a comment? Lisa, can you come to the mic, please?
Lisa Logan, 402 Maryland. I'm just curious, it's a 10-foot setback that they're asking for. Just out of curiosity, could the plan just not be shifted over 10 feet? Why? I mean, it looks like on the other side there's room to shift the whole house plan, so I'm just curious to know why they would need a variance.
This blue line there is the reason, because as water goes over land, it tends to erode. And so over time, that may erode, so he's trying to shift his home as far east as possible.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Cole not being here can't address the problem. But, anyone else? Discussion among the board?
He owns lot 10.
He owns a lot to the north of that, which is the one that has a house on it. Or this one here, that one
Right. Lot,
has a house on it.
lot 11 is the one that is set back very
Yeah, it's a city right away, that's correct.
This whole area, the lot 11 itself is a city right away?
Yes.
Okay.
And my question on this is how would this be viewed if that lot were owned by another individual and he wanted a 0-degree setback and that individual said it was okay and then later on changed his mind? Said, I don't like that.
Well, that changes the dynamics of everything, because the purpose of a side setback is to make sure you have sufficient property between two buildings to allow for emergency services and things of that sort, easements and whatnot. In this case, that's not a problem, but in your scenario, it probably would.
What if the city wanted to go in there at a later date and do something with it?
Well, because that's a sewer and stormwater easement, we
No,
would
like
have
they
no
could put
desire.
not a parking garage or something like
Right,
that there.
and here's part of the reason. If you look at this map there on the screen, you can see how these three blue lines intersect. We have a major line that goes underneath Robin Lane there and comes out right here. And because we may need to route something in the future, this easement here might prove useful in the future. But right now, we don't need it for anything, but that doesn't mean we won't at some point later on. So the chances of us doing anything there,
So if anything were done there, it wouldn't be a building of any kind, it'd be something to do with the water and the sewer line.
right,
Okay.
which wouldn't impact his home at all.
And the city is not likely to sell that, say, we don't need that,
No. Because we have so many stormwater problems around town, you wouldn't want to give away potential property to help you out in the future.
Okay. Anyone else on the board? Do I have a motion to either approve or disapprove the variance?
based on the discussion and the staff's recommendation to grant this variance request, I make a motion that we do.
That we recommend approval to the city council of the variance of 301 Robin Lane. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Ms. Wilker, Chair Bush,
Yes.
Mr. Kerrigan,
Yes.
Mr. Driver.
Yes.
Okay, that concludes the variance. We have a guest this evening. Mel, would you like to introduce her?
Sure, the city had contracted with independent consultant to take care of our heavy lifting for planning, because my expertise only gets us so far, so you gotta bring in professionals. Alara Mills Butcher is that professional that we hired, and she is in the audience this evening to kind of go over with you the comp plan process, what needs to be done, what we should do, the time frame, the process, and the whole thing. So rather than me sit here and yap, I'll just let her take it from there.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak here. And as Mel said, I've been routine to help you through some of your comprehensive planning issues. And the first thing that I looked to was your future land use element, because that kind of drives a lot of what happens within a city. In your packet, you should have a matrix that looks something like this that I put together for you last month. This goes through what the statutory requirements are for the future land use element by section of the statute, which is 163.3177. And as you're probably aware, the state legislature has offered a little guidance on what you should do with your comprehensive plan and what it should contain. And so these items here in this matrix are required by Florida statute. The comprehensive plan is an overarching, big picture, broad document that is full of policy to help you with your growth and development of your city. And then, of course, you have your land development regulations that are the nitty-gritty, the details that implement that comprehensive plan. So the land development regulations will have things like setbacks, they'll have things like parking requirements, but your comprehensive plan will be a bigger picture, 10 to 20 year picture of how you want to grow and how you want to develop your city. So the matrix that you have in front of you, I went through and I just kind of compared your existing document, which is dated 2007, so it's 10 years old. You are supposed to update those every 7 years, so you're a little past due, but you're in pretty good shape. If you look through the matrix, you'll see, I don't know if you got a color copy, but there is some red text in the matrix that shows you what you need to really look at to include in your update of your future land use element. Do you all have a color copy, or
Yes,
is
we
your
do.
okay? Good. Some of what I noticed, you are lacking some future land use categories that are required by Florida statute. Those include the industrial, the agriculture, and you need a mixed use category to allow for a mixture of uses in the same parcel. You don't have to actually map those. You don't have to have them on your future land use map. You just have to have a category in case somebody ever wants to come and apply for that category. It would be available to them. So those are three that we definitely need to include in your future land use element. I did notice that in your existing future land use element today, you do have a lot of background information, including some definitions. You have some data in there. Most jurisdictions don't adopt that into the comprehensive plan, because if that changes, then you have to do a comprehensive plan amendment to change those. They're usually adopted by reference or included as a reference point to the plan. And so you've got a good deal of that in the front. Where your policies start, which is on page 28 of the document I have, the future land use element, where it starts talking about the purpose. Actually, we need to go back a little further to the first goal.
Ours aren't dated, aren't numbered like that. Ours are 1 through 7, 1 through 8.
The comprehensive plan you probably don't have with you. This is the future land use element. This on page 30 of your comprehensive plan. That's where your actual nitty-gritty starts, with your policies, your goals, objectives, and policies. Anything before that, I would recommend that you either have in a separate document, or just really think about whether or not that's imperative for you to have in your plan, because if something in here changes, such as the methodology for calculating you have on page 24, proportionate fair share. If you need to change that today, you'd have to go through a comprehensive plan amendment. If you had it in a separate document outside of the plan, then you could simply change it as you feel necessary. It wouldn't have to go through ordinance, it wouldn't have to go to the state. It's just an easy change. But the goals and objectives and policies that you have in your plan are required to be adopted by ordinance. You are the planning commission, so you are in charge of this document. It's your directive to oversee any recommendations to the city council on what it needs to say. So outside of what we need to look at in the matrix, if you've had a chance to look at that, what I'm looking for you today is to give me some input on what you feel like your future land use element should say that maybe it doesn't say today, or just some general ideas of what you would like to see your city in 10 or 20 years, so we could kind of figure out maybe some policy to support that. And any other input you have, maybe some things you've heard from your constituents or people in the community that you feel is kind of lacking in your plan that you might want to include in a future update.
And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not prepared to address that, because I haven't even thought about it. And I would think this is something where we need to have a working meeting where we can invite the public in too, and have the public input into what we're doing, and actually sit down, have a meeting, however long it takes, give people time to think about it, put something out, have people look at it, think about it, come in, put our heads together, and then come up with something. Because right now, I don't think we're even prepared to begin to do this.
I think two issues that have come up already though is lot size and minimum square footage. So those are probably already got those on your list, but
Now, those things we can kind of broadly discuss in the future land use element per land use category, but those things are typically handled in the land development
Yeah,
code
that's
when you get
another
into the
question.
details like that.
So let me understand this then, what, you're gonna develop it based on what we want, is that?
Yes.
Okay. See, all the more reason for us to get together and be able to sit down and have a working group to figure out what's going on and get the public involvement in this before we sit down and put anything out.
When that time comes, how much of it will be, or will any of it be desired personality of the community versus policy?
So it can be, yeah, you can have as much local decision or local preference in here as you want to. It's your document, it's your decision, you have to have what this statute says you have to have. That's the bare minimum. But you can have as much as you want to also as far as guidance for growth and development.
Would you recommend that we go through this matrix and then take each one of these things in the matrix and see how we feel about that? And then, where the work needs to be done, or we want to see something changed, then address it item by item based on what's in the matrix? Is that the way you go about it?
That would be helpful. If you feel like there's something in here that is already covered, some of it is already covered and you're satisfied with that, then we don't need to go through it. But if there's something in here that you feel needs an amendment, then yes, I would need to know what you feel that needs to be amended to.
Anyone else? Any ideas or comments on when we should, what we should do, or how we should address this? Because I definitely, I'm open to anything that you think will work.
seems like we ought to at least take a stab and go through the ones in red
Okay.
that are there and just have you tell us what typically, if it's complicated, what typical documents have in it, what we would be looking for.
Okay. So the first redlined item is on the second page, and it talks about the future land use plan element shall include criteria to be used for, and then part A of that is achieve the compatibility of lands adjacent or closely proximate to military installations, considering factors identified in that statute. So you did have something regarding that, but I think it needs to be augmented. One source you could consider is some of the language that Bay County has, because they're the neighboring jurisdiction that is also adjacent to Tyndall Air Force Base. So we could look to see what they have mentioned in their plan. That's kind of something that's easy to address based on what other jurisdictions do in that area. Part C of that same number 3, encourage preservation of recreational and commercial working waterfronts for water-dependent uses in coastal communities. I don't know, you can tell me, do you have any commercial working waterfronts in Mexico Beach? Is there like a shipbuilder or something that relies on waterfront property to exist?
We have charter boats that work out of the public canal.
So they're not specifically on private property, that's a commercial land use. They are just working
They're on
out of the
both.
marina.
They're
out
on
of
both. Yep.
So those that are located out of the commercial land use category, then that would be a working waterfront because they rely on the water to do their business. We would want to include some policies to help protect them and their businesses. In essence, what you're trying to do is preserve their economy and preserve their business by helping them stay where they are rather than getting maybe pushed out by a residential development that wants to put something there that doesn't necessarily
Where they're
need-
located, though, that would never happen.
Yeah.
Never say never.
No, the building front that you could build on there is about 10 feet. I mean, there's the road, then there's like 5 feet of grass, a sidewalk, and then the boats.
Okay.
So there's nothing, you don't even have room to put
It's
a
not deep
pavilion in
enough
there anymore.
to construct
Yeah.
anything.
They're municipal slips is what they're using.
What about the marina?
Is that a city
The
property?
marina, no, that's.
No, private.
It's privately owned.
So yes, so that would be a working waterfront, yes.
Yep.
Yep. So that would be something you'd want to consider.
Yeah, I can ask Nate about that.
So you do have those. We'll look to some policies for that. Down at the bottom, the last box, provide guidelines for the implementation of mixed-use development, including the types of uses allowed, the percentage distribution, other standards, and density and intensity of each use. So this is something, again, that you don't necessarily have to have on your map, but we need a category to be able to provide that in case somebody wants to come forward and apply for that category. Doesn't mean they'll get it. That means they have the ability to apply for it. So we need to look at a mixed-use category that would allow for whether or not it's different types of uses horizontally or different types of uses in the same building vertically. You'd want to make sure you have a provision or a category that allows for that kind of development. Several years ago, when the state was looking at sustainability and looking at policies to prevent sprawl, that was one of the ways they decided to integrate that into the statute so that you can have walkability, bikeability without having to get in a vehicle and add traffic to the road to get to maybe your neighborhood store or your daycare or your dry cleaning or whatever it might be, just in a close proximity to each other. So just to have a policy, a category that would allow for different types of uses on the same.
How about going back up to D?
D, that's what
D,
I was-
where it talks about school proximity to urban residential areas. We don't have any. We're not likely to get any since we're
Right,
so small.
so that's not applicable to you because you don't have any schools, right?
Right.
Right, so just don't worry about that one then?
And I think the state, didn't they exempt you because your children go to Gulf County for
Correct.
school?
Right.
Right.
Right. Right. So you wouldn't need to address that. So on that next page, there's nothing in red, but in the middle on number 6, it talks about historic district boundaries. Do you have any, I don't think you do, but do you have any historic preservation boundaries, like historic residential districts,
Not that I'm aware of.
National Register properties? No. So that's not applicable.
What about, 4, did we skip 4?
The amount of land use designated for future planned uses. Yes, so that is more of a data and analysis issue. This is kind of what you have in your plan before all of your goals, objectives, and policies. You do have some data and analysis in here, not a lot, but you do have some. That's the kind of thing that we develop to support the policies. So this would be some sort of data that I would look at and analyze to support your plan updates. So it's not necessarily a policy, it's just knowing where you are. To go and look at your existing data, your existing population, your projections. So I think that the bigger issue then on the remaining of this is just the need to include an agricultural district, agricultural, industrial, and the mixed-use districts in your future land use element. And a lot of this is just things like the natural resources that need to be shown on the map. We just need to make sure you have a map series that shows wetlands, coastal construction control line, whether or not you're in a hurricane evacuation zone, those kinds of things. You need to make sure those are on your maps. So other than that, it seems to me I'm hearing you want some more time to think about what policies you might want to include that are not currently in the plan that would be important to the growth and development of Mexico Beach.
Okay, going over to section 1, purpose and intent of the comp plan, I'm really unhappy in that there are no goals listed. And I think
Are you on the first page?
I'm on
you're on
page
you're in the
18 of
plan.
ours, of our comp plan.
Okay.
I think we ought to have goals that are measurable, that we can actually look at and see this is where we want to go and this is how close we are to getting there. This is what we need to change.
Okay, so the goal is like the big picture The objective kind of talks a little bit about how you can get there, and the strategy or the policy is the strategy, is how you're gonna get there, and that should be the measurable part of the goals, objectives, and policies. So the
But
policy.
nowhere can I find any goals anywhere in any of the documents we have, is this is what we want Mexico Beach to be.
So you want a goal that says,
God, well, if I would go back and refer to what I did like about 3 or 4 months ago, it's kind of like, promote growth consistent with, and then a litany of things with land use consistent with a bunch of stuff, public safety.
so you want to, so are you saying that you want to make sure that your growth
Environmentally friendly.
is on level with the provision of services? Whether it's
Yeah,
fire,
things like that, environmentally
police.
friendly and stuff like that. I think it needs to be spelled out in the law.
Okay. That should be part of your capital improvements element also, so that you make sure that as you're growing, you have in your 5-year capital improvements plan, the budget to pay for those services.
So is that purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan, is that the place that, you know, goals should be? Or what we want this comp plan to address?
Yes, well, purpose and intent is kind of is for the entire document. Transportation, all of the issues, conservation of resources, all of the issues. Then you'll have the goals that are within each element, future land use, transportation, that pertain to that specific element. So if your goal of, what I'm hearing from you might be more of a capital improvements element goal, that you want to make sure you have the resources to provide the services to the population as the population increases, or however it might stabilize or whatever. That's what I'm hearing you say. Is that what you're?
Well, you know, the LDR is supposed to be based on what the comp plan says.
Correct.
And I have a hard time sometimes trying to figure out what it is we're supposed to do, whether we're approve a variance or whether we're going to do something else based on what is the city actually trying to do, because nowhere is it spelled out. Somewhere we need to have it spelled out what the city intends the growth to be.
Well, for example, if you had a policy or a regulation that said you don't want to issue a variance adjacent to city-owned property because, see, that's the kind of thing that you could hang your hat on a variance, but it has to be pretty specific for something like that. So, yeah, you definitely can have those.
Let's go back to the pool in the front yard issue, okay? Why does the city have that policy? What is it about the city which, you know, what is that, why do they do that?
Something they decided years ago.
Yeah, but I mean, why? I mean, it sure doesn't hurt aesthetics, it sure doesn't hurt property values. And I think all that stuff needs to be spelled out somewhere. This is what we intend our land use to do. You know, protect the following things or achieve the following goals.
Well, a pool in the front yard.
If I'm the only one that feels like that, I'm not gonna worry about it, but I just think it would be helpful. Also to the public, I think the public would like to look at that and say, okay, this is what they're trying to do. And if we're not doing that, then the public ought to be able to stand up and say, hey, you're not doing this like you're supposed to.
Right. So a pool in the front yard, a pool would be considered an accessory use to the primary use, so it's an accessory to the residential home. So if you have a regulation that says you can't have accessory uses in the front yard, then the pool should fall into that category.
But why would you have that? That's what I'm trying to get at, is why would you have that regulation?
That's a local preference. Unless there's some kind of safety issue with the building department as long as it's fenced and children can't just walk into it.
Am I the only one that sees this?
Well, similar to the height restriction, I think is where we're trying to go. There are certain things that kind of make our community
Right.
that we would want those to continue.
Right.
And it would be nice to have
And
specifically spelled
That's why I
out.
said, to me, some of those things, while they may not be, I don't understand them, maybe it's legal policy, but it's the personality of a community. The height
The
restriction
character.
is not the character, not because helicopters can't get in for medical reasons. They've just decided that this
Right.
Years ago, what helped me a lot, I moved back here in 2001, and a firm was retained. I think it was early 2000s. because I was here. And it was the same firm, I believe, Duwani, that might have been the name, but they were the ones that did Seaside. And they did a vision plan. And it was in this room, and they did mock-ups, and they invited public input, and they came back with renderings of this is how your city could look. And there were some objectives. They wanted the city to be more walkable. So if that was adopted, then that might be an objective that's later referenced if you're trying to build a sidewalk. Why would someone want a sidewalk that runs the length of our community? Because we've decided that we want it to be a more walkable
Right,
community.
right. Well,
But
even
those
if you-
are vision and character
Yes.
items, like you mentioned.
Yeah, so that would be a broad policy that you would have in your comprehensive plan, that we want to have a more walkable community, and then you would have strategies or policies underneath that goal or objective to how to get that done. And maybe you'll have a timeline, we want to get that done by 2020. You know, that way you can measure whether or not you've been successful as to whether or not you have accomplished that within the time frame you set for yourselves.
I think I'm with you, Jim.
Yeah, I just think somewhere in the document, everything ought to be in one spot, and then when you go out in each specific area, you address it, say, okay, the objective is to make it, the more walkable is one of 25 things somewhere, and then when you go to the policy where it's make it more walkable, this is what we need to do it. But I just
support.
think everything ought to be in one spot where everybody can look at it, and not have to look through a whole document to find out what it is you're trying to do.
Well, you would adopt your document, and then you could have a cheat sheet that's out, just a handout that will give you your 25 points or whatever they are.
I've been in the military too long. Trying to simplify things. Lisa?
Yes, you are trying to simplify, and this needs to be simplified, and thank you for that. I too came in 2000 here, and I sat through reporting on years and comp plan changes and all of that. And what we have at this point has basically been a reflection of the personalities of the city council. We've had 2 vision plans. The first one was done in 2003, I believe. That didn't go over real well with a whole lot of people. We had a separate one in 2007, which addressed a lot more basic issues. But that didn't go anywhere either. So we've got a lot of documents, and the public came and talked during, I know, the 2007 one. But all of this together has been mostly personality driven, and nothing has ever been followed through on. And it's never been part of the capital improvements plan. That's just out the window. So it would be nice to see something that actually stated what the people want and what the city wants and what we all want together as far as what we want to look like in 10 years. While we've got those envision plans, they're in these vague terms. You know, there's never been a plan put in place to accomplish that, which is one of the big things. How do we get there? So it would be great if y'all could actually work on something like that. And the public does have a lot of comments to put in, so I applaud you, Jim, for wanting to hear from the public, because that's very important.
Do you have those copies of the 2003, 2007 things there?
Yeah, one of the vision plans is on the website. I'm not sure which year it was,
I
but
think that's the 2003 one.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, it's on the city website?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do you think they're still pretty relevant to the current?
It'd be worth us taking a look at it anyway. if
Worth
nothing
looking
else.
at.
See how we did?
What have we got?
Before we do
You
something
mentioned
different.
that the next month's meeting is kind of between the weekend and the 4th of July.
Correct.
What do we have for next month right now?
At this point, we have no variance requests or applications, so we have nothing at this point.
Would this be a
However-
good time to give us a chance to look this stuff over, and then actually have a working meeting, let the public know what's going on? And
Now, what about that June 20th meeting? Is that supposed to be when we're?
That's the state of the city thing, where we're just gonna go over each individual department, what we
Okay.
do, and
Okay.
It's really not meant to be a visiting or
Okay.
anything.
Is there a timeline for this process that we're trying to adhere to? No, okay.
It'd be nice if there would be a chance, not everybody can come and speak. Some people do better writing. It'd be nice if there was a website or something where people could just send in comments, say, I'd like to be able to walk to XYZ on 15th Street and I can't, or whatever, just because I think that's how you generate, one idea could help you think up some other things. And at least everybody then has had an opportunity, and we can certainly have them come here too, but nobody can say then that, well, I didn't have any input. They can say it, but they had a chance to have input into it and take those ideas and run with them. If they're, if we get one that wants to have a stoplight in town and, maybe the other 999 don't want a stoplight, but at least we know where we are on that.
And that goes back to, because right now, there's no real way of people commenting, other than just sending you an email or something, is there?
Right.
I mean, right now, you can't go on the website, and just say, okay, these are my comments on what's going on. And I think I said this again like about 5 or 6 months ago too, is the public needs some way of communicating, electronically with the city. And I still think that's exactly what you're talking about now.
Yeah, and Mel shouldn't get all those emails. We should help him with those or whatever.
Somebody needs to be
Right.
responsible for getting that stuff and being able to read it and pass it out where it needs to go.
Right.
But the public needs to be able to somehow contact the city rather than have to pick up and walk in or pick up the phone. Be able to put it in writing so it's a hard copy.
Everything's
We want to
electronic.
make sure somehow, though, that it's a city resident that's making those comments, so, because they have the most stake in what
Sure.
goes on here.
Well, that's we're a tourist community, so there's nothing wrong with getting input from tourists either. We might not give as much credence as residents, but we are a tourist-based
Yeah,
community.
I kind of disagree on that a little bit because I understand resident to vote, but there are property owners that own a substantial amount of property here that don't vote. So I'm not sure a resident that, that we need to exclude those people. I think we should absolutely include them because they're the majority of the tax base in town,
The non-residents?
non-residents.
We only have, what, 1,100 full-time people?
Yeah, something like that.
1,200. Back to Mr. Kerrigan's comments on timeframes. There's not a time frame for me, but Mel has applied for a grant from the state for some funds to help with this process, so there would be a timeline on that, and you would have to expend the funds by the middle of June of next year.
Oh, okay, well, that's not.
Yeah, we're good then.
I'll probably roll it on then. Does anybody here have like the next meeting, whether it's the 3rd or whether it's later? I mean, does that sound like a good idea for the next meeting to sit down and somehow make it known to the public that this is what we're going to be doing? And, I may be able to email you guys a little bit ahead of time, say this is what I'm thinking about, and actually send that out somehow or put it on the city website or something, so they have an idea what we're looking at before we do that.
Sure.
Okay, so how about the 3rd of June? How do you guys feel about that? Are you going to be available for that, or we need to do it some other time?
No, that's not a good time.
I mean, 3rd of July, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I'd rather move that back a week if we can.
Back a week if you wish.
Beth, how do
I think I can probably be here the week later.
Bill?
Yep.
That works for me.
It'll be the 26th of June if that's what you wish to do.
Sure. Looking forward,
You might not have a building.
yeah. 10th, but.
We could always 10th of
The conference room
July.
in City Hall.
The 26th would work for me well, okay.
When I said back, I was thinking.
You were thinking
further out in the
further to
future.
Yeah.
July, that would actually work better for me if it
10th of
didn't
July?
matter.
10th.
How about,
Yeah.
Adrian, how about the 10th?
Second Monday.
No, that's budgets are gonna start all of July Mondays. Wednesday's wide open every week.
It doesn't,
That Wednesday would be good for me.
The 5th?
No,
No, 12th?
12th? Is that good for everybody? That gives us a little bit more time to put something together.
Mel, are you, does that fit you?
I'm here.
12th?
Okay. Everybody agree 12th July is good?
Same time?
Same time.
That's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
So on the 12th of July, you all are going to have a workshop?
Basically, yes.
And
And if we have something to address, we'll address that and then have a workshop after the meeting. It shouldn't take too long.
Right.
okay. And you'll have comments for me to help know where you want to go
Correct.
in your direction.
We'll have the public here for their
Okay.
comments. Maybe we may have something in writing from the public by that time too, so.
The plan that was done in '07, you said, you think that one's on the website or '03's on the website? Okay. Can we get a look at '07? Is it, it's probably not even electronic or anything.
No, we'd probably have to go in and look at it. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Is it
I'll have to try to
big or
dig it
can we
out.
scan it or?
The comprehensive plan online? Is that what you're asking about?
The comprehensive
Yeah.
plan is.
07.
They're talking about.
Oh, it is '07?
They're
Okay.
talking about the vision
The
that was
vision
completed.
document is what
Vision
we're talking about.
document.
Vision's not online.
So we'd have to come in the office and, okay.
LDR's online.
Yeah. Do you remember whether the vision is
Yeah, I thought the vision was part of the news section.
10 pages or 5 pages or 100 or?
Could be in the wrong spot.
Well,
2003, citywide vision.
Okay.
And these were, and I'm sure there were plenty of text, but much of it was graphic that I remember. There were oversized boards that basically said a few things are unique to your city. One of them is the name. People say Mexico Beach. Is that not in Mexico? No, that's in
First
Florida.
thing I thought when we're.
Right. So the one business at that time that they used as sort of inspiration was the recently redesigned Parker Real Estate Office. And showed, do you see the arches up in the top? Okay, that's sort of an architectural inspiration. Another thing that I remember was what's unique to this city, to most of the people that come here, that come from Georgia, pass into what they call slow time. Things slow down. They move from the Eastern time zone into the Central time zone. So they recommended essentially some clock monuments when you entered it, 386 and Highway 98 down here at Lookout Lounge, and those would follow the same architectural style. And so there were things like that people could say, I like that or I don't like that, but it was easier to interpret than legal documents, I think. And
So DPZ is an architectural firm, and they're really good at drawing really great renderings and visioning, and trying to get that into a policy that you could have into your plans. That's going to be kind of the trick, because clocks at your entrance, it's great, but it's not really a policy you would have in your future land use element.
I'm sure the stuff in there definitely is.
yeah, there's the things that I remember,
Yes.
because they were graphic and
Right.
visual, but
Right.
if you found those, you'd probably find the other things that are more action item oriented.
I remember that
Thank
plan
you.
also had a rendering of Mexico Beach's 98 corridor without the overhead power lines, and how much better it looked without those.
Well, and I think about those types of things because they did that in Port St. Joe. Maybe it was in a plan, or maybe because it was Matt Fleck's initiative, who was over downtown redevelopment at that time, but they got that done from basically the entrance to the city to about where Port Inn is. But it was
So they have a CRA over in Port St. Joe, and that's what helped pay for that.
Mhm.
Scott, you have anything else?
I don't.
So that bears the question, are we CRA averse in Mexico Beach?
Are we what?
CRA averse?
I don't know what CRA is.
Are you a proponent or an opponent of CRA?
I don't even know what it is.
It's a statutory allowance that you can create a district within your city, and then at that point, the tax base is frozen in value, of the values of the properties. So any property values that increase over that, that differential in the tax comes back into the CRA, and it has to be spent inside the CRA rather than going to other coffers. Sometimes it takes a long time to have a bank account. It depends on the development. If you're not a plan to develop the area, then there isn't a whole big incentive to do it, because you are relying on the redevelopment of the area to increase the tax base.
And Bay County just takes that extra money and puts it in an account for us, is that what happens?
We get it, put it on our own account. But it has to be used for that purpose.
Has to be spent inside of that district.
Yeah.
And that's probably how Port St. Joe funded the underground
Okay, the
utilities.
advantages to that are obvious, what's sort of the disadvantages?
You have to have somebody monitoring, and you have to have a CRA director.
Ah.
And if
I
you're
mean,
taking those funds away from the
If you
regular.
have existing staff that can handle that position, you can definitely do that.
You're also taking.
Right, you're taking funds away, so something's gonna have to be given up on the other side if we have a balanced budget.
You're taking funds away from where?
The tax base,
You're not taking away, you're getting the difference, so that the tax, the threshold that you start with, whatever year it is.
the town collects $1 in 2017.
Yep.
Okay. So,
So they collect $2 the next year, that dollar has to stay within the CRA, has to be spent within that CRA.
But
So
losing
you're not
whatever
losing
inflation-
money,
Whatever inflation is.
whatever the property value increase, that differential, that tax.
Yeah, but let's say asphalt costs 51 cents a square foot and this year and 52 cents a square foot, so
Right.
you've lost that.
That's part of it.
yeah.
Okay.
The other thing I've seen is, like in Atlanta, I was on the downtown improvement district, a self-tax of downtown, where the downtown group gets together and agree to tax them
There's one in Panama City.
themselves.
The
And then
downtown
net
improvement.
funds are used for improvements only.
You can create a MSTU, and that is another kind of district that you can, but you're taxing the property within that district to make improvements.
I just, not saying it won't work, but I think we have a lot of pressure now on taxes because we don't have any industry here to help contribute to the funds that we use to operate the city. So I think it'd be difficult
Yes.
to,
Commercial and industrial are cash cows for a city, and residential is a drain.
yeah, what do we have?
And that's one of the things that the 2007 vision plan talked about, because a large number who contributed were the business people here. And they were saying residential is what we've got, and we destroyed most of our commercial by allowing townhouses and condos to be built on our commercial property, and we have nothing to sustain us, and you can't sustain a town on residential. And residential is basically all we've got. So that's a problem.
So that's accurate from a business owner's perspective. When we want to expand, we're looking at the commercial lots and they don't exist. And do we want to go to Port St. Joe? Not necessarily. If we want to go to Panama City Beach, there's more business opportunity, but we don't want to leave. But there's not commercial opportunity to develop.
So then rolled in, you could say that, one of our things in the future may be that we don't want to rezone any commercial to residential
Right.
in a broad
That would be a
statement.
policy that you would
Just because
have.
we know that it's
Right.
our future
Yep.
to get additional funds.
Or we realize that there's an economic need to consider rezoning from residential
Right.
to commercial where it makes sense to sustain the city.
We're not very friendly to do that. Or haven't
We
been.
may not be
Depends.
now, but we may not
Well,
understand the need of it.
It might be an interesting exercise to project 20 years down the road. If you convert a certain percentage of your property to residential, where will you financially be in 20 years?
And who would do that?
I'm assuming you just pointed
I
at me.
did.
Didn't you? I just smiled.
The back beach road, the famous back beach road, will that be within the city limits of Mexico Beach?
No.
So the potential commercial on that would not be funds that we could use.
Unless we go into an annexing spree.
That was my next question. Can we annex that area now before it's
Assuming the
something
property
that's-
owners wish to do that, yes.
get it now before it becomes difficult. It's probably already difficult.
Well, you have to wait for them to apply for the annexation. The only time you can involuntarily annex is if they're almost enclosed and surrounded by city limits. Then you can involuntarily. Or if you get a certain percentage of the people within an area to say yes, if they're smaller residential lots, for example. If you get a certain percentage to say yes, we want to annex in, then the others are kind of just forced into it.
So they just unincorporated Bay County then?
Yes,
Right now, on the
Right.
Back Beach Road?
Right.
That's what they'd be?
right.
Okay.
And that's what our agreement to the fire department is. We do provide fire service. And they
That's
give
another
us,
taxing, that's another burden on you to provide services that are not for those that aren't paying you taxes.
Right.
Anything else on this? Thank you. Mel? Miscellaneous?
Go back up and see what that is. Locations for medical marijuana. I passed out to you before the meeting, because it's hot off the presses as of Friday afternoon, our attorney's first stab at the medical marijuana ordinance. Along with that, we had Bay County provide us with a map that shows us in the gray areas there, the 500-foot buffer of all the churches and parks within the city of Mexico Beach. The proposed ordinance would allow the medical marijuana dispensaries only in the commercial area, general commercial, which is the red areas. You can see there's a pretty large section of general commercial on the west side of the city. There's a few spacklings on the east side of the city. There's this area here where Rustic Sands and that area is, and down here where the post office and the storage place is on the left part of that red area. But La Siesta Street itself is a single family residential area that was developed in the commercial area. So there's language in that ordinance that would preclude anything in this neck of the woods, because that's next to a family area there.
And a great deal of your red on the north side is now condos.
So that really hampers where these type of things can go. The ordinance did need some, maybe I didn't put the ordinance in here. The ordinance itself needed some clarification on a couple of items. For instance, how many dispensaries should we allow?
Well, I think supply and demand will take care of that.
Oh, don't say that, I mean, my God, we'd be overrun with them.
No, we wouldn't have, I can't imagine any more than one succeeding, if one would succeed.
Well, there hasn't been a pharmacy needed here.
I can't.
I mean,
What we'll probably do is maybe review this next month at the July 12th meeting, because you got it passed out to you just moments ago, so you really have not had a chance to read it. So by all means, take it home and read it, and give us your thoughts. The next couple of items, the minimum lot size and the minimum size for living space, residence, et cetera, et cetera. Last month, we just lightly touched on the subject of some homes going up that allows the parking of boats, cars, and golf carts within living spaces. And I made a copy of the area that's on around 5th Street in Florida or Georgia, somewhere over there. They do have the minimum requirements to get a building permit. They've got the bathrooms, they've got the kitchens, they've got the bedrooms, but as you can see, the large living room area does allow for parking of something, and if you look at the end diagram there, that is the garage door. When you speak with our building department and the gentlemen and the ladies who do these inspections, they say that there's nothing we can do which would disallow this type of thing because they meet the minimum requirements. The only thing that they've been able to come up with, though, is if you store flammable stuff in a vehicle or something, you would need some sort of wall between that parking area and the living quarters. That's just common sense, for crying out loud. But I think what these people do who want these type of things, they don't necessarily have something parked in there while they're here for the weekend. But when they come and enjoy the golf and whatnot while they're here for the weekend, they leave on Sunday night. When they leave, they park their boat in their home. I can see the convenience. I mean, it'd be really nice, but that's not the intent of what we would really want. So that leads into the, minimum house sizes that we talked about, the minimum lot sizes.
So most of the lots are larger than 6,000 feet, 6,000 square feet,
Right.
which would be 60 by 100.
Bay County's, what, 800 square feet? Seems like we talked about that last
You mean
time.
living space?
Yes. I think, I remember that number from either Port St. Joe or Bay County from the stuff Mel gave us before. 8 or 850, something like that.
I think Port St. Joe has a minimum of, I want to say 1,500.
That's bigger than our house.
I thought it was over 1,000 anyway.
Yeah.
We're talking house size, not lot size.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I see that. I saw that someplace.
And
Anyway.
these ones that are going in down here by Toucans are how big, how many square feet are the houses?
800.
Yeah, 800, 900, it varies.
The plan that you put up there, is that the home that is on Georgia right now, or is that
Yes,
just
sir.
some land?
It's one that's on Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
The one that really looks pretty.
What's that?
The garage really looks pretty.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll buy more tenants.
Well, okay, as far as the lot size, I mean, 6,000, I mean, if most of them are larger than 6,000 now, how many are at 6,000? You say what percentage? No, square footage of lots.
I would say most lots are 6,000 and above. I mean, you've got your smaller lots on the eastern side, but even they are,
58.
yeah.
So, I mean, 6,000
Looks like the
reason-
minimum that
Looks
we see
like
here,
reasonable minimum lot size. So we need to recommend to the city council to consider a minimum lot size? And is that what the issue is right now then? And minimum living space size?
Minimum living space size. In other words, at the last city council meeting, one of our city commissioners had 2 items he wants to work on for a 90-day moratorium. He does not want to allow boats, trailers, trucks, and that sort of thing to be stored in the living space, which we just talked about. He also didn't want for a single-family home to be made of metal, like metal siding and that sort of thing. So that's what he was wanting to pursue. And the city council will be talking about this tomorrow night as well. Because if they want to implement this 90-day moratorium, we need to do it sooner rather than later. But I think the the
I think
metal,
based on what happened down in Toucans, though, we need to address this other issue also,
right?
prevent it from happening again.
There is another home on Bailey Lane that just got built. Was one of those things that happened almost overnight. They did get the proper permits, but it happened quicker than we thought. In other words, they wanted to build their accessory structure first because the gentleman was a contractor from another state. He wanted to come down on the weekends and work when he could, but he wanted to build his garage first to store the building materials for the house. We said, you can't do that. You can't have an accessory structure without the principal structure first. And he said, then in that case, I won't build my house, I'll just build what I would call the accessory structure, but he called it his house. So he changed his plans, made the proper application to the building department, and much like this other small home, it looks very similar in that it has a metal siding as well as a garage door on one of the sides. And so that's the type of thing that we're trying to fight. It might be more difficult to get rid of the metal siding because I don't know what kind of stuff's available in the southern part of the country here, but up north there were some steel siding that looked like wood siding and vinyl siding.
Arguably the most upscale community around here is Windmark right now that allows metal siding. It's not steel like what you perceive to be commercial metal that the city hall, old city hall is in, but it's Galvalume boat metal. I mean, the building that we built in Port St. Joe in Marina Cove was, I don't own it anymore, but that was metal up on the second floor because it was attractive, and
That one might be more difficult, but you know, they really want to do something about the storage of these items in a living space. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where's Bailey Lane?
Bailey Lane is in the Grand Isle area, east of City Hall.
Okay.
I'd really like to make a recommendation to to the council that we have come up with a minimum lot size and a minimum living space size. If they don't want to do anything with it, that's fine. But I think we need to put it out there because we need to preclude what happened down at Toucans from happening again.
The house garage, the one on
Totally.
4th or 5th Street, how many square feet is that?
800 some odd, I think,
Uh-huh.
850.
is that the one on Georgia we're talking about?
Right,
Yeah.
The garage house.
Yeah.
right.
Okay, well, okay, I think,
You got a point of,
I just have I just was thinking about something, because I know you and I talked about this earlier, but you might want to look at your definition of what a dwelling unit is also. And maybe you have
Okay.
something in there that precludes any area that stores a vehicle as part of a dwelling unit.
Okay.
To prohibit the storage of a vehicle inside of a dwelling unit.
Okay.
And then you couldn't count that space as your square footage for your minimum size on
Okay.
the house.
We'll give it a look. Thanks.
okay, so I think 6,000 feet is
a minimum.
is a minimum for the lot size. And if you look at a house, 30 by 30, that's 900.
Mm-hmm.
You think that's reasonable?
You know,
That's,
I do. I wouldn't want to
I sure
require
wouldn't want anything
someone to be-
smaller than that. I mean,
you've just got condos and stuff that are a
Getting-
lot smaller than that,
we're
different situation.
we're talking houses that are
Right.
a lot.
Right.
But it sort of gets back to that vision. If one of the things that we want to do is preserve green space and views, those sorts of things, I think people don't want a home that is so small that it looks awkward. And it doesn't fit the neighborhood because it's 12 feet by 20 feet. But if it's 30 by 30, it feels like a small home. And I'm okay with that.
It's at least.
Public? Of course.
Of course, you might as well get used to this. You know where I live, most of you know where I live on Maryland. the blue house next to me that garnered so much attention when it was being built, is 608 square feet. Large one-bedroom, full-size, nice bath, 2 bunk beds built in, kitchen, dining, living room, porch. That's 608 square feet. It's 16 by 38. That was an affordable house. It sounds like you want a square footage, and I understand wanting square footage to mean something, but you have to think about people who will not be able to move here because they can't quite afford your square footage. That house was under $60,000. It is built better than 9 out of 10 houses that I've seen built in the last 15 years. It's on a 50 by 145 foot lot. It's just fine for a single person or a retired couple. And I don't understand this propensity to not affordable housing, and I'm talking about actual affordable housing, out of the picture for people who want to retire here on very limited incomes. I don't understand that. If you're going to have a square footage, make it the size of that, 608 square feet, because most people will go up. You can go up to a 20 by 40 and still remain under $100,000. Anything over that's going to jack you up into a price that you might not be able to afford. So saying 900 square feet, to me, is discriminatory. I know not everybody, a whole lot of people like to see these large, elaborate houses around here, but that's not necessarily what we need here. So I'm just saying, from my point of view, I would urge you to consider the fact that you need to go down to at least 700 square feet if you're going to be looking at this, and not knock people out of this market. I could not come in here and do this. I came when I could afford to do it. I live in a mobile home. I love my little mobile home. It's very well built. And yes, my mobile home is 1,100 square feet. But I could not come in and build 1,000 square feet. I couldn't do it. But I could build a 700 square foot house. So why should I be knocked out of living here because I can't afford a larger house? Just something for you to think about.
Board?
Well, you said that you felt that most people like to see these large, elaborate homes here, and I'm not sure that that's the case.
Not necessarily, I'm not talking 2, 3, I'm not talking 3,000 to 4,000 square feet homes. No, I don't think most people want to see that. But people like large houses here. And I think that it knocks out a key component of people. I just do. I think it knocks out a key component of population that could be here.
What did you say you thought Port St. Joe was?
I was talking to Bo Creel one day, and he mentioned, when I was talking about minimum house sizes, he said that he thought they were like 1,500 for a normal single-family home.
I'm talking about, does their LDR specify?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
I understand where you're coming from. What's the square footage on these things that we looked at before? I mean, they're some tiny things.
800, they said. You're talking about the toucans, close to
Yeah.
toucans, 800.
Yeah, they're small.
The problem with toucans was the lot size
Size.
more than the house size.
Yeah.
But by the zoning, they could have put 2 more on there. So,
Which is a mistake. But,
Yeah.
but house size is different from lot size.
I'm not sure what I have here, but it's Bay County Land Development Regulations, and there's discussion, residential districts, VLR, and same district R1 in this discussion about 850s mentioned, 1,200 square feet for single-story dwelling, 850 square feet for two-story dwelling, minimum floor area required in both District B, L, R, and District R1.
Do you have any idea where those are based on your?
It says Bay County Land Regu, it's that stuff Mel got for us. It doesn't have a cover page on it. Unless it's just, I have a blank page in here. It's from our old stuff. It's with the packet for May 1st, last meeting.
But Bay County is huge. Bay County has massive land areas. We're a tiny place. We have a set amount of land, and
800.
comparing Mexico Beach to Bay County does not make sense.
Why don't we just go with minimum lot size for now? And then-
Yeah, and I just did some rough math here. You were talking about a lot that's 6,000 square feet.
Mhm.
So that would be 100 by 60 or 75 by 80. And if you had a lot that was 75 by 80 and you put an 800 square foot home on that, which might be 40 by 20. If that were situated on that lot, your side setbacks would be 17 feet on either side. Your front and back setbacks would be 10 feet on either side, or 20 feet on either side. That feels aesthetically pleasing to me. I don't, when I think of that size lot and an 800 square foot home sitting on it, it appears that it would look nice. It's not an awkward, tiny little garage.
Whatever you do, just make sure that your lot size corresponds with your density from your, whatever your category is that you're looking at. So if your residential category allows 16 units to the acre, don't make the lot size impossible to meet that. No more than 6 units to the acre.
I can't remember what those numbers were. We had them last time.
7260 is the average lot size, density-wise, for your normal single families, residential areas.
Existing?
Well, that's what
That's
it
16
says in the
units to acre.
LDR.
Okay.
Oh, that's sure smaller than 6,000 then.
Bigger.
Oh, 72 by 60?
Yeah, that's.
Oh, 72 by
No,
60.
7,260.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then 6,000 would work.
But it
Say it
increases
was
your
the seven-
density to her point.
I'm trying to figure out what the problem is. Is the problem not having?
Problem is people putting houses on teeny lots and they're being right next to each other.
So it's not the boat storage building, it's more of houses that are cheap.
Well, that's what the city council sees as a problem. I don't think we see that as that big of a deal, but we just had a housing area go in down here by Toucans where you've got 16 houses going on a postage stamp.
So your issue is tiny homes, maybe? The tiny home movement where people are.
Or crowding of homes.
Crowding of homes. They're right next to each other.
And they need the setbacks?
Well, it's
First commercial?
Yeah.
yeah, it's commercial property. Isn't it? I know it met everything the city required.
Right.
Residential low density property, that was the issue.
Correct.
Because right now, the city doesn't spell out minimum size, minimum lot size, just what you can go in per
How
acre.
do they make the density?
Well, but it does spell it out based on how many you can put per acre or
Right.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Because this was a single large tract of property, and they're calling it a residential PUD.
Neighborhood,
type thing.
neighborhood.
Neighborhood PUD.
So they're not individually owned properties?
No.
They are,
They are.
There.
right. They're owned by the same person, but they're individually platted.
But he didn't exceed the 6 dwelling units to the acre.
No.
Well, we're creating problems for ourselves if we do this.
Good question. What was your final decision on the house size?
Well, I think
Or
we
did
need
you-
to, I mean, I don't have a problem with what you're saying, 800 square feet. I can appreciate where she's coming from too. That would make it a little bit more affordable. Do we really need to come up with a minimum house size, as long as we have minimum lot size?
We don't have to. The council just asked for your direction on that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now,
I
keep
just
in
think we
mind
need-
that
I definitely think we need to have a minimum lot size. Just,
if you had an 800 square foot home, you'd still have the garage home that got built, so wouldn't change a thing.
Okay, I move that we recommend to the city council that they look at amending the LDR to preclude any lots less than 6, or minimum lot size being 6,000 feet. Second.
Second.
As a part of clarification, that would be in the residential areas,
Residential.
right? Okay.
Second?
A second.
Oh, you seconded, okay. Roll call.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Chair Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Driver?
Yes.
Okay, were they looking for something for us on the the garage issue and the metal buildings, or is that what they're just working on? Are they not looking at anything?
Well, they wanted me to bring it up at tonight's meeting to see if there's any recommendations you might have. And if you don't, that's fine, because you weren't directed to do it.
No, I mean, does anybody have anything they want
I think maybe we can, I hate to kick the can down the road, but doesn't mean we couldn't bring it up at the next meeting when we're here. Give a little more chance to, I know a couple builders, I could call them and see what they think and talk to some people on the minimum square footage rather than just pick a number out of the air. There's, that Bay County, and I can do some more research on that. I mean, it clearly says 850. But Mel, you gave us a great, I just don't have that right in front of me of what Port St. Joe was, whatever, and it'd be good to have a piece of paper and look up there at that. But
Okay.
to? Yeah, I don't think we have anything on that issue that the council was looking at.
Right.
Okay, what else have you got, other various and some
I was just gonna bring up the date thing for next month's meeting, but we've already
Okay.
killed that horse, so we're good.
Okay, does the audience have anything before we adjourn? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move that we adjourn.
Second? Adjourn.